folks, how's it going? Beautiful full moon there behind the clouds here in Portland, Oregon on a very crisp early December evening. Alright, I'm going to zoom out here so you can see the full context. Alright, here we go. I'm just out on a street, as you can see. Check out these pretty Christmas lights. Just getting into the Christmas spirit here, and I'm going to keep on walking here and walk by some more just down the block here. Alright, so I just wanted to do a quick little introduction to this interview with Teal Swan. I am just passing through Portland for a couple of days. I just came down from working in Jasper National Park, Canada for the past 4 months. I'm flying to Hawaii in just a couple of days. And here's some more pretty Christmas lights. So anyways, feel free to subscribe to my channel here, both for more thought-provoking spiritual content, as well as to follow my upcoming travels to Hawaii and wherever I end up going after that, which may very well be Mexico and Central America. So I had a really amazing discussion with Teal a few days ago, a 2-hour-long discussion, and somebody asked me if I could put out the full unedited version of the interview so that they could hear the whole conversation, the small talk, the back and forth, the awkward pauses, you know, get kind of the full experience there. And so I said, okay, sure, I'll go ahead and do that. A little more of the Christmas spirit here. So I just thought that I would put this out as it is, and as you will see, it is a very in-depth, thought-provoking discussion, and it gets more deep and more intense as it goes along. So we start out basically talking kind of more practical, down to the earth stuff, and then get more out there and more kind of spiritual and cosmic. So I hope that you enjoy it. Look down below this video and there is going to be a link to the completed edited version of this video once I actually get that finished, which might be a week or two, but I will post a link down below. You can click on that if you want to watch the more normal interview experience. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching, and now on to my discussion with Teal Swan. Have a great day. Hello?
Hi.
Hey there. Oh, great. We got you on video.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. You were just finishing up a painting there?
Yes.
Frequency painting?
Yes.
What's the frequency?
Organization.
Ah, cool.
You have it recording, right?
What's that?
You have it recording, right?
I have it recording, and I'm sorry you probably can't see me on video once again.
Yep.
This time it's because my webcam is broken.
Oh.
It's definitely time to get a new computer. But I'm recording this 3 different ways, so I think I have it covered. So you're still in Park City then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you sort of scrap the moving plans altogether, or still thinking about it?
No, I still want to move eventually. I just was so put off by the way the ocean looked last time I was in California that I don't think it's really healthy to be anywhere near there right now.
I see, like energetically from...
No, like actual radiation, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely disturbing. I'm headed to Hawaii in a few days.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's probably a similar situation in that regard.
I guess I'll find out when I go there in February.
Oh, sweet. Are you doing a synchronization workshop?
Yes.
Great. Do you know where? Which island?
I think they're still trying to deliberate.
I see. Excellent. Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll be there.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, my plans are quite open-ended. So I'm here in Jasper again, where I was when I interviewed you the last time in Canada. Mm-hmm. And just finished up working 4 months. Yesterday was my last day. Tonight I hop on a Greyhound bus for Oregon. So I am definitely excited. It was another intense working the night shift experience. So
Yikes.
yeah, it's pretty. It's definitely pretty. Pretty intense on the physical body, on the emotional body. Like,
So how'd you manage?
I managed. I hung in there. I got a lot of stuff done. It was all around good. I saved money. I did a bunch of videos, both travel videos and the spiritual ones, and so it was all around good. But definitely, a bit lonely up here. It's very isolated. Working the night shift, you're in a hotel by yourself all the time, just thinking about stuff, and it's peaceful, but it can definitely be a bit surreal.
That would make most of us go nuts. Makes me feel like I'm in The Shining just thinking about it.
So I'm definitely glad to be done with it, and Hawaii is going to be a complete and total reality shift for sure. So you've had a lot of changes in the past year since I saw you there.
Yes.
For sure. Congratulations on coming on a year of marriage, right?
Yeah, isn't that bizarre?
Yeah.
I can't believe it was that long ago you were here. That freaks me out.
Yeah. Does it feel more recent?
Much.
Okay. The year has kind of flown by for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So are there any, have you looked at any of the other places you're thinking of moving to, or?
No, that's my issue. I would probably be moved already if I knew exactly where I want to be. But I just don't. And I'm not feeling particularly called anywhere. I know that I want to go somewhere where I can grow my own food. Because that's I've never really done that except for when I was super, super young. And I didn't have any sort of participation in that. And I feel like it's really the most intelligent thing for health. And also it's just on an emotional level, it's super healthy to be close to your food, close to what you're taking in as part of you. But and even on just like a health level, right now, especially with all the stuff that's in commercial grown food, it's way better idea to have a handle on what's actually going into the stuff you eat, I think. So. Yeah,
not to mention the self-sufficiency and.
But yeah, let's just not even go there, right?
And saving money, and it's just like all around. Have you been to Sedona?
Yeah, I don't like desert very much. I know it's like mountainous desert, but it's still just it's not my cup of tea, really.
And have you been to Hawaii before? I don't think you have.
No, this will be my first time there, embodied. So.
Well, the island of Kauai is really spectacular.
Yeah, everybody keeps saying that to me. We'll see. Probably I'll move there and fall madly in love with it.
Well, hopefully you'll get the chance to go there. I mean, all the islands are great, so. All right, well, we'll jump into things here.
Great.
So on the subject of marriage, to whatever extent you feel like sharing some insights and whatnot on relationships, because I posted a thread in your Facebook group asking, what questions people might have, and I knew that I was going to get way more questions than I could possibly handle, but I think there were a couple that asked about relationships. Do you have any specific insights, learning experiences, lessons in a year of marriage?
So many. So many. I don't even know how to whittle it down. We are actually just talking today about writing a book together about relationships and starting to do relationship seminars, because it is such an intense nightmare in most people's lives, honestly.
Yeah, that would be a well-received book. I'm sure people would be very interested in hearing what you have to say.
Do you have any specific questions you can remember from people?
Nobody got too specific on that, but well, let's start with because one of your first podcasts was on a subject of privacy.
Still not a resolved issue in our relationship.
Okay, well that answers the question, because I actually a video response to that one from India, and I was somewhat siding more with Sarbdeep on that one, even though I definitely see where you're coming from and the importance of moving towards greater openness. But so you basically sort of left that one unresolved, huh?
Well, we haven't left it alone or tried to avoid it. It's more that the issue keeps coming up and we keep running into the same impasse. But what we've both decided to do, in accordance with a lot of the instructions which I've been receiving from, let's say, people that are not embodied, my guides specifically, is that what has to happen for two people to find a meeting of minds is that they have to purify their negative reasonings for going into things. So if you remember, I don't remember whether it was part of the episode or not, but there are positive, like super positive reasons why, like, I want oneness and openness, right? But there's also shadow reasons, right? And if you look at Sarbdeep, or your other partner, if you're in a partner with somebody, the same thing goes for their desires. It's like a mixed vibration between things that you want for really good reasons and other things you want for really shadowy reasons. And so for...
What would the shadow reasons then be, like, of wanting to sort of avoid stuff and just, leave stuff behind within, like shadow stuff?
All right, so this is what I mean by that. If you look at my desire for complete and utter openness, right? You have the universal truth that oneness is there and that all forms of authenticity basically are going to free you. And so until you get to the point where you're ready to air your dirty laundry, you're still in self-rejection, right? That's the positive aspect, super universal aspect. The negative aspect, if we look at it, and it's like I'm of course assigning the title negative to it, but if we were to look at this sort of shadow aspect of it, what you can see in my childhood is that I was injured by the lack of exposure. I was injured by privacy. Having been in an abusive situation where the secret was to remain between him and I, and that was exactly how these people end up killing children and getting away with all of this awful stuff. So obviously I have a very deep wound in association with privacy.
Yeah, I mean to the extreme of being secrecy.
Yes. Now, if you look at Sarb, and you look at his childhood, right? He wants privacy for some positive reasons, being that there's a simplicity to not involving everybody in every aspect of your life, especially when you get famous. I mean, if you look at somebody who's in my position, I've got thousands of people that are sending me emails every day wanting to come live with me. So, it can get really frustrating and difficult when the door is always open for everything. And so it's understandable why for the positive aspect, that simplicity and the ability to contain your energies and to really choose what you give away or keep is a positive aspect of privacy. Now, if you look at the negative aspects, the shadow aspect of privacy, and you look at his past, you have somebody who is injured by exposure, his boundaries were never, ever listened to. That means that, in his childhood, growing up, when he said no, it didn't matter whether he said no or not. People just did exactly as they pleased. And so, and of course, a lot of embarrassment also of his parents just exposing things about him to their friends that was super embarrassing to him, and he wasn't ready to divulge. So he has a lot of wounding around the idea of that exposure, which is like, openness. So what we decided to do is, which I think I would advise any couple to do if you're in one of those impasse situations, is to focus, drop the positive aspects for a minute. Don't even make it about that. And work individually on the wounding that you've got around that particular charged subject. So he works on the wounding he's got about exposure. I work on the wounding I've got about that secrecy and that privacy. And then what happens is you start coming more into alignment with the positive aspect of that, which usually looks more like a balance. Of course, balance is a whole other subject, which I'm going to do a video on because, yeah, I've got some interesting views on that one. But the point being is that you find this really healthy place where you're in a space of total awareness, and the reasons that you're doing things are not motivated by wounding, they're motivated by deliberate choice.
Yeah, more from a pure desire for oneness, would you say?
Yeah. And you make smart decisions then also. It's not like you just give everything to everybody. You're in a space where it's like, I know what's self-loving for me, and what self-loving for me is doing this. And so what you're noticing is that it's not that I'm really doing anything much different, now that we have been doing this kind of a process. Sarvdeep is actually getting a lot more open, ironically, but I don't feel the hurt anymore in association with it as strongly, is what's happening. It's not like I don't feel as inhibited by a partner that wants privacy as I used to. It still sucks for me, though, to have, like I'm getting emails, of course, about the fact that the only wedding photos that I posted are wedding photos of myself. So now I get to look like the most narcissistic human being alive. Like, look, it's my wedding. Here's me. So that still sucks, but...
Yeah. It sounds like the one of the lessons there is of identifying, your differences and where you're coming to a head, and then not necessarily expecting to resolve it right there, but just the awareness of what it is and the intention to resolve it. People don't change overnight generally.
Yeah.
But that's the point of relationships to a great extent is for it to foster over the course of time and
that actually brings us to a nice point that I've been coming to relative to relationships in general, which is that if we're in a relationship, rather than wanting to agree, we should be focused on understanding each other. So if you and I are in a relationship and I'm trying to understand you and you're trying to understand me, then we will both be understood.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, rather than beating someone over the head with why don't you do this and why don't you do that.
Which is what most relationships are crap, because it's really a power struggle. There isn't really that genuine desire to know somebody or to have that level of intimacy. And so what we end up with is, I want you to be on my side, and the other person saying, I want you to be on my side. So now we're fighting about sides when we really should be on the same level playing field if we really took each other into account. But I feel like we've done a pendulum swing, of course, because in the beginning, when it came to relationships, it was like self-sacrifice was so paramount and that doesn't work, that we've now swung the pendulum to like this super self-centered type of a mentality about relationships, where it's like, well, if you don't agree with what I need and want, then you're done. And so we need to sort of come back towards the center, where we're capable of prioritizing ourselves as well as our partners, and seeing that those things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and you need to find out whether you're actually playing the game competitively or cooperatively. I'll just give a very quick little example here. I forget, I might have mentioned this in another video or something sometime, but there was this experiment that people did with children, in which they invented this game, and there was only one piece on the board, like imagine a checkerboard, and whoever got the piece over to the other person's side would get a piece of candy. And each person gets one move. So it's really a trick game, because you move it one and then the other person moves it one. So you're just going to move it back and forth if you're playing competitively. But if you figure it out, if you trust each other, then you can just say, okay, we're going to move it over to your side first, and then that person gets a piece of candy, and then they move it over to the other person's side after that, and then you can have all the candy you want. But as long as you're in competitive mode, then you're going to be fighting against each other, and nobody's going to get anything.
I think that's a serious blessing of being in the particular relationship I'm in right now, is that I've met my power match. Meeting your power match is a really, really nice thing in life, even though it's uncomfortable as hell, because when you butt heads, no one's going anywhere. So you're kind of forced either to like split up, or else to learn how to do that and go in the same direction.
Exactly. You just have to develop that trust and just decide, okay, we're in a we're in it together to make as much of it as we can, and how can we move it forward and not be locking horns.
Exactly, but to do that, you have to decide you're committed. That's another issue that I watch with people in relationships. Is that we can say we're committed when we're really not committed. Like, if you're committed, then it's very easy to make relationship issues change. But if you're not really committed, then you got to make the decision whether you're going to commit or not first before you even start moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you have to be able to accurately, as best as you can at least, assess whether it's even possible, considering your relationship, considering the two people, to come into that place of true cooperativeness, or whether it's just going to be a butting heads kind of a thing for who knows how long.
That's the frustrating. I think the most frustrating part to relationships is, and what makes most people feel the most powerless, is because it really does take two to tango. So it's very important that we pick people who are capable of tangoing. Not that we always get along, because there's nothing wrong with a argument or butting heads or whatever. But if we've picked a partner that doesn't want to tango, then you're never going to be dancing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
I watch that also a lot in relationships or in life, where some people don't actually want relationships where they are in their life, but they think they should have it, and so they get into them, and they're not really ready to do that yet. It's like, I don't want to get my hands messy, so make this clean for me, or I don't want to be here, So have fun with that. Life is messy as hell.
Yep, no doubt about that. Well, this is definitely a subject we could spend hours on, but we have limited time here, and I have a lot of questions, so we'll move on here. So fairly quickly here, just thought that I would ask if you have any further assessments on sort of the state of the world. Based on the past year of developments, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on as usual with major developments in the Middle East, and the Ebola situation, and as you look at things, then would you say that things have improved in any way in the past year, or what are the prospects for Earth in the coming decade?
I watch more polarizing than anything else, so it's like, as it gets worse, it also gets better, and as it gets better, it also gets worse. So you find people on the planet today that are reaching higher and higher levels of consciousness, and great numbers of them, as opposed to previously. And simultaneously, to the paradoxical side, you're watching people slip into conflicts that are really approaching a phase of life which we could say is unparalleled on our Earth yet. We're still a match to World War. So I would love to see us pull out of that one, but...
Bashar gave an interesting analogy in one of his videos. He talked about, imagine you're at a train station, and there are all these trains, leaving the station. And as they leave the station, going off in different directions, they're relatively close to each other, so assuming that they're going quite slowly at first. And so if you're on a train and then you realize it's the wrong train, you can still get off that train and hop on another train. But as things continue moving outwards, then it gets to where you're more committed to the track that you've chosen, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the way he describes it, at least, then that's just going to be accelerating over the the next just few years.
Yep.
Do you think that 5 years from now, life as we know it now is still going to be more or less the same, or do you see any kind of a very sharp change?
I'm surprised the very sharp change hasn't happened already, frankly. Well, as far as me looking at the life paths that are a match to Earth right now, I don't see our economy lasting 5 years for sure. And when you just look at that on a logical level, if our economy isn't going to last like it is for 5 years, then life itself is going to change, because everything is dependent upon the economy.
Yeah, that's definitely the one of the key issues. Not to mention, obviously the environment and everything, but in terms of what has the ability to majorly impact people's lives in a very quick way. I continue to watch various videos on the economy, and I'll just throw out there for anyone who is interested to see some information on this. Two guys, Greg Hunter and Fabian Calvo, have YouTube channels, and they do regular videos interviewing people and then sharing their own insights. And they're like, Fabian Calvo is a business insider, and just one after another, just people are saying like things are really on the verge, and the dollar is going to collapse, and people who are insiders and top level people who are saying that this can't really go on all that much longer.
Exactly.
A few years perhaps, but.
So what I like to tell people, and then people, of course, when we tell them that, they start panicking and like, how should I prepare for it? And the reality is that there's really not a super stable plan yet for dealing with the world and the state that it could get to pretty quickly. And so what I would tell people is that there are a few things which have always been true, which is really what we should put our stocks in again. And what that is that there's power and strength in numbers. So one of the reasons that I'm so interested in bringing these intentional communities around the world is because people in the single family home unit are not going to do so well during this change. People who actually have a group of support and also a group of people who have different skill sets are going to do much better. Also, what I want people to remember, because a lot of us in this country will lose all the money we have, because honestly, like, what are you going to do? Bury it in the backyard? Maybe some people will say yes, but if you don't have a real solid plan, and if there's not really a plan that's out there that's super awesome for how to maintain wealth, if wealth in and of itself becomes not valuable anymore, what you've got to remember is that skill set, which is something that nobody can take from you, is always valuable. So, like, let's look at a doctor. A doctor has a skill set. They know exactly how to help someone heal, on a physical level at least. And as long as that's the case, you can't really take that skill set from them,
Yeah.
Sorry, did my stuff just go off?
Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
All right, you're back.
So should I just continue?
Yeah.
So real stuff, basically, like a skill set or like something that you're good at, is always going to have worth. So if you take that from place to place, that's a solid guarantee that you're going to get abundance as a result of that trade. So those are the kinds of things that I encourage people to put their the real weight of their trust in, basically.
As well as building community.
Yeah.
And perhaps getting a garden going.
Yeah. Yeah, the food thing is definitely going to be a major issue. Like, even here I am in Park City, right? And it's, December, and you couldn't grow a pine cone, much less anything else. And in this particular, and that's in the summer. In the wintertime, you're not going to grow anything at all. So, yeah, people who are in places like this, if the dollar collapses, we're not going to be able to live here. Isn't that an uplifting thing?
Yep, but you gotta deal with reality and with the shadow, and I'm definitely not into just focus on the positive.
Me neither. But I don't have it's not like I'm getting a message yet. It's not like my guides usually within like 1 hour will be flipping out and saying you need to leave, and that's when I leave, right? But I'm not getting the message yet, which is why you haven't seen me like fleeing out of America or something. But the day very well could come where that's the message I get. And if I get that message, you can be damn sure I will tell everyone about it.
Okay. Good to know. We'll be keeping our ears open for sure. Yeah, just awareness and some sense of preparation. Recognizing the fact that we're dependent on the grocery store and whatnot, and that isn't necessarily a guarantee. And what can people do to get ready in some way?
Exactly. And what I also tell people is that, like, when we're really looking at something we're afraid of, we don't want to suffer, right? So what I encourage people to do in order to not suffer is, well, first of all, there's this idea basically that you have to worry about something in order to be aware of something, which is not true. So we can be aware of all the options without panicking about what's going to come, you know? It's almost like saying, well, it's a potential that going down this river on this river rafting trip that I could run into rapids, or that we could get into a situation where there's a drop-off waterfall. I can be aware of that without panicking for 60 miles that might happen, you know? And then, of course, you can prepare for the what-ifs, but not make your whole trip about the what-ifs. That's really what we need to do. And the people that I watch that are doing the very best through these types of serious world changes are the people who are actually okay to lose it all. The people who are almost literally ready to have the whole tower fall and to go back to square one and to, like, deal with what is left over. It's the people that try to keep the tower standing that end up suffering the worst.
Uh-huh. And to not allow it to ruin your life in the moment of, you know, being so focused on preparation for some disaster that you forget to just, you know, be here now and make the most of what you got.
Exactly, which is why it's such an individual process. The idea of preparation has got to be so personal, because, like, let's say one person doing a stockpile of food in their basement might feel good, make them feel a sense of relief, and so they feel better, and so that's a good idea for them to do because it helps them release resistance. Whereas the next person doing that would make them feel even worse and make them feel like it's more likely to happen and stress them out, so it would be not a good idea for that person. We just have to let go of the idea that there's one correct answer that's the right thing for everyone to do at this point in time on Earth, and that's what everyone has to do. Because we're not getting that message, and nobody agrees. Did you notice? It's like you listen to experts on what's going to happen in the world and how to prepare, and none of them agree with each other. So it's like...
Yeah. So, thought people would be very interested in hearing about your kambo experience.
Best decision ever.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, you didn't do a video on this, right?
No.
So I read about it on your blog. So, if you'd like to tell people, how did you hear about it? What is it, and is it legal? Can anyone just go do this?
As far as I know, it is legal so far, of course. So let's have an inside joke and say that it will be legal as long as it's not curing cancer yet. Okay, so basically, as far as I know, it is completely legal still, because it's not a drug that causes, like, what do you call it, psychedelic effects and things like that. It's not a psychoactive drug, really. It's basically frog poison. That's what kambo is. It's this frothy poison that comes out of the skin of the monkey tree frog. And when they put these little burn marks into your body, and then they put the poison into the burn marks, and within about 30 seconds, the venom, the frog venom, goes in through your body. Now, I was super skeptical before I went out to do this thing. It was one of those things where when you get into the spiritual community, you start hearing the word ayahuasca fly around, yahe, you start hearing about psychedelic mushrooms, and it's sort of in the distance, you know. Kambo is one of those things that you hear about happening, but it's in the distance. And so I had not had any real desire to do it, but they say that the frog starts calling you, which is totally true. So they'll just start showing up, and it's like you get that impulse, you know, maybe I should do kambo. And so I was real hesitant for about a week when I just kept getting these signs. Everywhere I went, frogs were everywhere, and I just at the end of it, I was like, that's enough. I'm doing it. And so what kambo is designed to do is to lift what they call panema. Panema is a word which we don't have a direct equivalent for in the American language, English language, but it essentially means like a dark cloud or bad luck or bad karma or like a heaviness. So you can see that multiple physical ailments could fall into that. Anything that's like an incurable, I can't get past this type of an issue, whether it be mental, emotional, or physical. So the people that just feel like they're just stuck and can't get like out from under this dark cloud of whatever it is are really the best candidate for doing the combo. And what I watched when I went there just completely blew my mind. And I'm very conservative when it comes to spiritual medicines. I'll just tell you that. So the fact that I flew out to do this was very surprising, even to me.
Mm-hmm. You were just going on intuition on that?
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah.
But so basically, when the venom goes in, what it looks like on an energetic level, if we're going to play that game, is that it looks almost like a green fire. And it starts just winding its way through the lymph system and through the bloodstream, just like in this avarice way. And it'll hit your heart, and that's the part. It's basically the heart medicine. It's the strongest heart medicine, combo is. And so you'll start to just hear nothing but your heartbeat, and it's just deafening. It just absorbs your world, and combo sucks you into yourself. And it removes your mind, which is, I think, my favorite aspect about this particular medicine. When you're going through it, it's like you couldn't think even if you wanted to. You're aware, kind of, but you're not logically thinking. It just pulls you into the heart space so strongly. Then, of course, it causes you to purge and all of that good stuff. But it's not like the kind of medicine, it's really a healing medicine. It's not one of those medicines that you take to go gain awareness into the rest of the universe. You're not going to be seeing like elaborate light displays, most likely.
Okay, it's more about your mental, emotional state of being.
Yes. So when that green fire starts to overtake your body, quite soon after that, this white fire just goes and flares up. So it's like there are two ghosts chasing each other through the whole body. And that's what it looks like. So it took me a little bit to figure out what exactly that white fire was. What it is your immune system. So the body's own immune system is this bright, I mean like blindingly fluorescent white light. And it chases this poison basically, and then it burns off the poison, but in the process of doing that, it turns the human on an energetic level into a human tiki torch on the levels of physical, emotional, mental, all the way through their aura fields. So it's purifying all of that. And it's like any ailment, you know how the immune system can be sort of lazy sometimes, especially if we're thinking thought patterns that suppress it. So the combo is essentially waking up the body's own immune system, and when it flares like that, it takes care of all the unresolved issues that are in its path that have maybe potentially been there for years. That's why it's been doing some good things for cancers. It's been doing amazing things for immune disorders. When I was there, I was like going crazy about the potential of getting people with AIDS onto this thing. So, and obviously on an emotional level, it's weird. It's almost like it just it cracks the shells off of you that are feeling like heavy or implosive, especially sadness and grief.
Wow. So you didn't have any, your vision was more or less the same? It doesn't distort the outside world in any way?
It doesn't really super distort it. I did have one vision, but I don't know if that's like super common to other people or if it just happened to me because I usually see things like that.
You're already sort of having a psychedelic experience, so.
Yeah. Your face feels sort of swollen on combo, and so your vision just sort of, it's like your vision does the same thing as it would when you're having a flu or something like that. You just feel like you're inside yourself in some way, you know? It's not like you don't look over and say, oh, that's a chair. You still know it's a chair, but you're not really fully present with the external world anymore. You've been sucked into yourself.
Wow, it definitely sounds like one of those things that's just very difficult to put into words what the actual experience is like.
Yes, it is.
But it was very much an altered state of consciousness, it sounds like.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it's like the best thing that we did for our relationship ever. That's been the most impressive thing that's happened, actually, I think, since combo. Besides both Sarb and I who did it feel like it's definitely removed some sort of a weight or blockage. But on an emotional level, it's had the biggest impact relationship-wise, where so it's like we came into a kind of softness. That, of course, makes sense, being the heart medicine, but it's like the battle is not raging for power anymore, and that was a definitive change since we did combo.
Awesome. Is it safe to say that it's part of its healing effects is is its effects on your consciousness and how it takes you into deeper levels of your consciousness.
Yeah, there's a real potential for that.
I did a video titled "Emotional Wounds Are Like Bullets," and how these wounds can get lodged in us, and then they basically scar over, and we try to carry on with our life.
Yep.
And it can appear from the outside that that situation has disappeared from us, but meanwhile we have this foreign entity in our body, in our physical body in that case, but we also have that in our emotional bodies especially.
Yes, immensely.
Would you say that kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of dig down there and remove some of that stuff?
Yes, I think removal is the number one thing that it does. I think that when I've been helping people to try to come up with intentions for kambo, I've asked them to work with taking things away, using the medicine to strip themselves of things that are unwanted anymore, so that it leaves them in the state of raw purity, basically. It's not a medicine, even though it adds good things to your life, it doesn't do it by adding it to your life. It does it by removing things that are in your way.
Yeah, so that you can get more in touch with just the raw truth of your being, basically.
Yes. It's interesting because it's almost like the kambo is, even though there's a very special vibration that particular frog conveys. For example, the frog has no natural enemies. And I've been wondering why it's so effective for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've decided, after looking at the vibration of that particular medicine, that because the frog has no natural enemies, there is no fear that's inside its being or its vibration. And so when you're taking that into yourself, you're actually adopting what that state is like, of having no natural enemies, which is super, super beneficial, obviously, for people who are in a victim vibration.
To experience a state of
Yes.
trust and openness.
But that being said, the majority of what it is doing is it's reminding your immune system of your own power. It's like the immune system, when it fires up, holds one of the highest frequencies there is. And if we understand frequency and we understand the idea of resonance, any frequency that is maintained must be matched. It has to be, otherwise they can't be a match to each other. So your body really doesn't get a chance or a choice when that high of a frequency is introduced to it. It has the option to do one thing, and that's to come up to meet it. So it's like you're using the medicine to remind your body what it already knows how to do, but it forgot or suppressed,
So if anyone seeing this was interested in having this experience, do you know if, I'm sure people can search around for the term kambo, and there was the fellow that you did it with in California, but I assume there's other, people can find online somehow if they want to do this, or?
Yes. It's not super hard to find people who do kambo because it's not illegal yet. But what I would say to people is that it's not I don't believe really in doing, unless you're really knowledgeable, I don't really believe in doing these types of medicines unassisted by somebody who's incredibly familiar with the medicine and who can hold space for the medicine. Set and setting is everything when it comes to these spiritual medicines.
Yeah, and your own intention and
yes.
being. Yeah, so
don't just do it for the sake of doing it. It's not a thrill ride. Really, we got to go into this like it's a serious rite of passage. You want it to be the right place, the right time, the right people, the right circumstance. And we can trust ourselves, of course, to know which ones resonate with us or not.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so I wanted to touch on the concept of ascension. How would you define ascension? Maybe there's different conceptions of what that means, but what's your take on it?
In my particular world, ascension means to no longer live in illusion. So it would be the state of complete awareness. We've called that many things over the years. We've called it enlightenment. We've called it a state of heaven, but realized heaven. Instead of heaven you reach when you're dead. It's a state of freedom, but it's not an exemption from the highs and lows of life. It's more that you're in a state of awareness to the degree that you're no longer resistant to the highs or lows of life. You're willing to experience everything. And that in and of itself creates an inner peace. Peace, of course, we have to understand is not, it's a transcendent state. The state of peace transcends opposition. So peace is neither good nor bad. Peace is neither positive nor negative. It transcends all of that. That's what most of us are actually looking for.
So kind of a pure acceptance of what is?
Yes. But acceptance is such a weird word, because when you say the word acceptance to people, it almost causes them to go in the opposite direction of where they need to be going. Because when we say accept, it sort of makes us feel like, oh, I have to just sort of like swallow this thing I don't want, you know? So it's almost like you find approval for it. Approval is a better word, I think.
Yeah, you were talking about that in a recent interview, I think.
Oh, you're going to hear me harping on that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, because it's one of those kind of subtle distinctions. It doesn't mean that you don't try to change anything, right? It's that you kind of recognize the underlying lesson of whatever has transpired for a reason,
yes.
As opposed to resisting it.
Yes.
And
subtleties are everything when it comes to trying to improve any aspect of your life, I think. It's what frustrates me the most about being in the role that I'm in, and also frustrates me in general just as a person who's embarking on a spiritual path and is never going to stop that, right? It's frustrating because it's like you're working with so much nuance, and these tiny little details and subtleties make all the difference in the universe. And it's really important, of course, that we make those kinds of distinctions for people, because it's very easy when we're making general statements or using general words like acceptance for us to have a concept of that word without paying attention to the subtle reactions that we have to those words. So, and just because of the subtle reaction, we might miss the meaning of something entirely. So,
to what extent? So, you're describing Ascension basically as a state of consciousness.
Yes.
In what way does or does that not correspond with other dimensions?
Any change in consciousness is going to affect your physical life and your ability to perceive the third dimension versus multiple dimensions. And so what you watch when people ascend, essentially, when they gain an awareness that is like I'm speaking of, is that they gain access to all awareness. Awareness cannot be limited to the third dimension. So you start to see the realities of multiple dimensions. You start to be able to see the perspective of a source consciousness, which is beyond all of it. And it has a very unexpected effect, which of course bores people, because when you want to ascend because you want to get out of the third dimension, which frankly is the reason most people want to ascend, like, this is dense crap down here, I don't want to be here anymore. You're sort of dreaming about the day when you're no longer restricted by gravity, and so you can fly around, and you're no longer restricted by all of these things, and so you can do whatever you want, and there's peace on earth, and nobody eats each other, and I'm not going to lie, like, there's an aspect of me that really likes the idea of that, but when you start to gain, like, true awareness, there's no need to show off the abilities that come with it, because you realize the only reason you would be doing that in the first place is to get a kind of, worship that you didn't have, of course, when you were younger. And because you see that aspect, it's like you can't really be in a place of integrity and do those types of things. Even though you can transcend this dimension, you suddenly see the value of this dimension, and so you actually become more of a liver than you were previously. Instead of being exempt from life, it's like it's more real and more beautiful to wash the dishes. So I find it funny, but the people who really truly find Ascension tend to be some of the most mundane. I mean, even though there's a true presence to them, and definitely when you get around them, you can definitely tell. It's still just like, I mean, they're very chop wood, carry water type of people. They're not the people who are like wowing you with like blowing crap up and or just with their mind and levitation and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because it's your state of consciousness becomes such that life is magical and mysterious, just within your being, regardless of.
Yes. You see everything that there is about life also, the positive and the negative. So obviously, if there is a physical dimension here, if there is war, if there is all of these negative things, then there has to be some kind of intention for it. And once you figure out that intention, you feel less of an urgency to basically put an end to everything that is vibrating at this frequency.
Yeah. So this kind of segues into a topic that I want to try to jump into, and
let's just die. Let's just go.
All right. So, I mean, one of the most important things in my view is finding true unity within with all aspects of oneself. And so
Well, you really shoot for the moon, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. That's just what we're all doing here. Most of us just haven't really known it yet. But it still is a seriously tall order.
Definitely. So, just to give an analogy to it, then if you have pure white light, and then you fragment it,
Yeah.
then you get the rainbow spectrum.
Yes.
And this rainbow spectrum happens to correspond with our chakra system. And I think, as you will probably agree, that a lot of spiritual paths have a tendency to focus on the upper spectrum.
Yes.
And the upper self.
Yes.
But the problem is, you're not going to get white light by just working with the upper chakras and the upper colors.
Exactly. That's spiritual escapism.
Yeah, because the lower self is part of the oneness, is part of who we are.
So when you say the lower oneness, what do you mean? Because that's going to confuse some people.
Did I say lower oneness? The lower self.
Lower self. What is that?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So, well, the purple is purple because it is vibrating at a faster rate and has a shorter wavelength than red, which is at the bottom of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So this shows the concept of vibration.
Yeah.
And so the lower self then is the lower chakra system. And this the emotions, feelings, desire, passion, intuition is part of the lower self. Apparently, we actually have something in our stomach that resembles a brain. Read something about that recently.
You should send that one to me. I haven't read that one yet.
I have no idea where I came across that. Something that somebody posted on Facebook, I think. And so what we're dealing with on Earth to a great extent is lower chakra stuff that people are deeply stuck in.
Yep.
Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can be working on your your creative visualization and third eye and all this upper self kind of a stuff. But if you don't deal with the lower self, then you're not heading towards true unity. Which
is always what bugs people about me, because and it's very typical of other people who are like super spiritual teachers. Basically, is that they focus way too much, according to other people, on stuff that's not fun to know about. Like I'm looking at my, I've got this YouTube channel, right? And when I look at the amount of views I've got on my videos, the number one viewed video is how to activate your third eye. And guess which video matters the least to me?
That one.
Yeah. The stuff that I'm much more concerned with is how do we actually tangibly live here? How do we deal with our tribal contracts, which is the very base chakra? That's your relationship to like the family you grew up in, your tribal safety group, That stuff fascinates the hell out of me because it's what creates the most problems. So, yes, I feel like I'm 100% in our spiritual practice, and actually that's really part of what this real new wave, basically, of spirituality is this practice of embodiment. It's the fact that our spiritual direction is not going to lead us into the stars this time. It's going to lead us like way deeper into our life here on Earth, into our embodied life, and into the real nitty-gritty of our physical, like, carnal natures. So, yeah.
And when you look at what's happening in the Middle East now, obviously, there's major anger issues going on there.
Yeah, you want me to tell you what so I'll tell you what chakra the Middle Eastern issues are corresponding to if you'd like me to tell you.
Yep, absolutely.
It's all the sacral chakra. Right now...
Which one is the sacral? Is that the...
First? Second. Yeah. So it's vibrating at the frequency of orange. But what that is it's your sexual creative energies. Now, of course, let's just go there. Like, hello, look at the religions there and their relationship to sex. Now, we like to look at sex and creation and be like, okay, well, that's pretty simple. But what if I told you that what your sacral chakra also relates to is your sense of power over other people? So government is sacral chakra. So what we have is a humongous power struggle going on in a group of people that are not in a healthy space with their sacral chakras. They're not raised to be in a healthy space with their sacral chakras. And might I add, most of us on Earth are not in a healthy space with our sacral chakras. So when you pit these like huge world powers who are really just like overgrown children who have unhealthy sacral chakras all trying to vie for power, yeah, we can pretty much guarantee what we're going to get.
Yeah, and then give them some high-tech weapons and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good one, too. Oh, here, instead of a Nerf gun, let's just give you, a nuclear weapon. I love it. This is like, it's so sad on one level, but on another level, it's like, God, what must the people in other galaxies be thinking? Wait a minute, you just gave that to that guy? Yeah.
So a while ago, I remember you posting in your Facebook group that you were going to go into the astral planes and investigate the concept of anger.
Yes, and this has led me in a major wild goose chase.
Okay, so because I don't think you put out a video on that.
No, it's still in the works because it's not like a lot of times what will happen when you go out of this dimension and you go looking for specific information like that is it's very clear cut. So it's like, well, yeah, okay, I should have probably prioritized this a long time ago because it's very straightforward. And then you come back, you teach it, and it's like, oh, why didn't I realize that before, That's not the case with anger, ironically. Anger is turning out to be a much more complicated thing than I realized, and there are multiple different perspectives within the universe, and so I'm weighing them and leveraging them out, basically, at this point.
Interesting. Well, that's definitely going to be a very fascinating video or whatever whenever you put it out.
Yes. Well, can I tell you one of the issues?
Yeah, great.
The higher that you go into the different dimensions, the more the concept of morality starts to dwindle. So you can't really look at the concept of anger without also looking at the concept of revenge. Now, our idea about revenge obviously depends upon our social ideals. And if we're trying to uphold a type of social structure, then revenge does not fit into the social structure well. But in the higher level dimensions, there is no such thing as social structure. And so whatever is good for an individual is good for everyone. So I'm running into a massive disagreement. And it gets this extreme, right? Now, a person who has been raised in a group where they've been socialized, that means we're looking to create a common peace, right? Basically, the idea of revenge doesn't benefit you, right? So people say, no, don't kill people. Now, when you go to the higher dimensions, even some of the highest vibratory beings, what we would consider angels, they say things like, yeah, let them kill him. Murder's not necessarily wrong unless you want to make death wrong. Now, how the hell am I supposed to come back down here and teach these kinds of concepts when it's going to be misinterpreted to me saying murder's good? Go kill someone.
Yeah, that's a tough one to convey the nuance on that.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like even me able to see all of these types of realities, I can't come down here and really convey that yet in a way where people are going to understand that nuance without really making it like, wow, Teal's gone wacko now. She's out there in the universe like hearing things about murder being an okay thing, but this is the struggle, is that when you reach a perspective that's that high, that all of our human understandings just go right out the window. So that's the issue with anger. But I'm going to figure out how to convey it, or at least rectify the issue, so that I can convey it in a nice way. But I haven't done it yet, so that's why you haven't seen it yet.
I think of anger as outwardly projected fear.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and definitely that's decided. Yeah. The issue that's not decided is what to do about the anger so much. I mean, I've got some suggestions, but there's also a lot of deliberation going on currently between people who are not embodied about the appropriate course of action. But you're absolutely accurate. Did I just solve your problem or create more problems?
No, that gives. I'd say neither. That gives some insights on it, and I'm definitely going to be, very curious to hear, what further you have to, to convey on that. And I've done a number of issues. I mean, a number of videos on the topic, and basically, I think that's one of those base things that.
Yep.
That's. I think of it kind of like puking. That it's like it's one of those things you just have to get it out and get it over with, and then you can move on. But as long as you hold it in, then you're gonna, feel sick.
That is the number one question, basically, that people have and that I have for everybody. Basically, is like, how do you deal with anger? Like, we can understand what anger is, but what do you do with it? Because it seems like most of our techniques, like smacking pillows and stuff, just it doesn't take the edge off it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean you have to get to the heart of the emotion and the real. As I said, the bullet at the
Yes.
at the depths of your consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, people can keep their eyes open for what you have to say on that later. So I wanted to try to tackle the concept of God. obviously a big subject. So I'll just, as quickly as I can, give a very quick little analogy, very, very simplistic, for the concept of who or what God may be, and then you can, feel free to disagree or agree or expand on this. But imagine that you have a vase, a beautiful vase, and somebody takes a baseball bat and smashes it to pieces. And so we would be like one of those teeny tiny little fragments that flew off of that vase.
Yes.
And then what I conceive of as that which we call God would be like a large piece of this vase that was kept intact. Does that make any sense?
A large piece of the vase?
So the point is that we are every bit as much of the oneness of that vase when it was intact.
There is no timeline. This is a good one. I understand where you're going. So let's expand on this one. There is no basic timeline in the multidimensional reality which exists. So essentially, the vase, which is now shattered, still exists in a state of wholeness.
And yeah, that's actually exactly where I wanted to go with this, is trying to put together the concepts of oneness and separation. Because here I am, a individual person looking through my eyes, obviously having a experience of being a seemingly separate individual being, as we all are.
Yep.
And yet there's this concept of oneness, that everything is one unified consciousness, simply experiencing itself in different forms.
Yes.
So would it be safe to say that the different dimensions, as you decrease in vibration down into the different dimensions, then that experience of separation gets more pronounced?
Yes.
So on some level of of reality, then everything is in its unified state of being.
Yes.
And can you say, like, is there a specific number of these different dimensions, or?
Well, once you get up past the 11th dimension, so we could say the 12th dimension, once we get to the 12th dimension, you can't conceive of there being a separation anymore. Because the 12th dimension contains all separate timelines and all potential timelines for all universes. Where else are you going to go from there? So our capacity to comprehend beyond the 12th dimension is not there. There's no telling whether we will be able to comprehend beyond the 12th dimension, though, because we are really in a state where each fragment of the vase is trying to come to a place where the vase realizes itself. The vase doesn't actually know what it is until it shatters. So even though it exists somewhere in a state of complete wholeness, it doesn't have awareness about that wholeness yet. Which is the whole purpose for life, if you want to know.
Now, what is that again? Of just, say, if you can answer that, what is the purpose of life?
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
You as an individual are a microcosm of the macrocosm, and the macrocosm we could call God. God wants to know itself, you ought to know yourself. How's God going to know itself? You're going to know yourself. That's how. That's that. Like, you got to study the idea of fractals to understand that, because in reality, all beings in the universe, even though they might appear physically different, are actually fractals of the greater universe. We're actually all the same, especially on an energetic level. And so it's almost like if you could make something the exact, like if all those shards basically of that particular vase were in the shape of a shard. No. If all those shards, that were part of the vase, were in the shape, were a shape of the vase, basically. That's what I mean. So when these mini vases basically become aware of their vaseness, the huge vase becomes aware of its vaseness. That is why we are doing this. So we must be super curious.
A collective awakening and awareness process. Yeah. So a fractal, just for people who might not know what that is, then is each little piece is a perfect representation of the whole. Is that
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to read one of the questions, and this kind of goes exactly into what we were just discussing. It's actually a paragraph, and it's a really awesome question. So I thought I would read. You may have sort of already answered it anyways, but maybe you'll have some further thoughts on this. But I think this is pretty cool just for people to hear.
Okay.
All right, so she says, lately I'm grappling with bare bones what is love really questions. From what I've gathered by listening to Teal, my life experience, and talking with guides, love is the preferred feeling state in this universe, and the one I prefer. But love is all there is, it's all we are not mantras I understand, unless love is the totality of all it is. It seems love is more an acceptance and non-resistance state to all that is, which would therefore be more of a perspective of what is, rather than the totality of all that is. Or maybe once you are consistently in that perspective, you realize love is all there is. My guides have also said there is a desire among races in the universe who have actualized and understand love to find out what is beyond it. But in order to take that leap, so to speak, it's important for humans to actualize it as well.
Ooh.
Like Teal's perspective on that. Yeah, this is pretty wild, huh? Overall, I know what love feels like, but I have a strong desire to understand it at a mind level, too.
I'm also going to do that video, by the way. I'm doing a video, What is Love, but I'll talk about it now, and I can just be a bit redundant. Love is to take the other as thyself. It is the ultimate symptom of oneness. So love, as a force in the universe, is just a symptom, which we can feel and perceive, of oneness itself. And that is the state of our true essential selves. And that's why it feels the way that it feels. It's like the purest form of authenticity. Now, the reason that we say things like there is only love is because you have things like love and then you have the lack of things like love. It's that kind of concept we keep talking about with the light switch, where like you have light and then you have lack of light. There's no such thing as darkness, really. Darkness is just a lack. So you have love or you have the lack of love. And so that's why people say things like all there is love. Right? But obviously, it doesn't look that way in a polarized universe. It looks like there's a hell of a lot of other things besides love, obviously, because there's people, having sex with 12-year-old children and selling them into slavery, and people killing each other and all those good things. So
a lot of unlovingness going on. And so one thing that she was asking in there is sort of, is there something beyond love?
Obviously.
Yeah, because of the inevitably continuing evolution of consciousness.
Yes, that and love, obviously, like we wouldn't know love existed if we couldn't feel it. So anything we can feel is ultimately a manifestation, and there's obviously something behind manifestation. See?
Behind manifest, yeah. The originating source. Yeah. I think that you said somewhere that it hasn't yet been decided as to whether there is a sort of ultimate culmination of this evolution.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just kind of a big question mark, huh?
Yes, which we of course don't like because we'd rather that God had all the answers. But why the hell would there be life if there were all the answers? Unless God's bored as hell. That would be sort of weird. I mean, unless you subscribe to the sort of 5th grade version of God, that's weird. But yeah, I mean, there's a great many questions that are not answered by God, so why the hell would people know it? And it was a shock to me, honestly. That's something I learned in this life, not other ones. When I started getting outside and outside and outside far enough that with that sort of objective way of looking at things, that I realized that there were still question marks for the universe itself. I was not anticipating that. I thought I was the only one in a state of ignorance.
So since you mentioned other past lives, one of my questions was to ask you about your past life as Sai Baba. So I was in India this past year. I had a pretty epic trip. I spent 7 months in Asia.
Yeah.
And you see Sai Baba images all over.
Really?
Yes. I mean, Sai Baba is very highly revealed. The Shirdi Sai Baba.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I went on this awesome hike up above Dharamsala, which is where the Dalai Lama lives, and it's also a popular tourist spot. And went on this awesome trek, and then you end up with a spectacular view. And there was a little shrine up there, and inside the shrine were an image of or images of 4 different deities, I believe, and I forget exactly, but I think it was Krishna, Shiva, and Vishnu, and then Sai Baba. So Sai Baba was the only one that was an actual person, or I mean that we know of. And so Sai Baba is very, very highly revered. So, what is your memory of that life as clear to you as your memories of this life?
Yes.
Wow.
Just feels I remember them with the same kind of clarity that you would remember being 16 or 17.
Wow. And what was kind of your, could you say what your intention of that life was?
My intention was to find an end to suffering. It seems to be like an ongoing trend.
I mean, ultimately that's what all spiritual teachers are trying to do that come to Earth, one way or another.
In that life I was able to do a lot more grassroots work. Basically in the place that I essentially owned, basically people would get dropped off there nonstop, so I was doing a lot more on a one-on-one personal basis with people. Because a lot of that, of course, changes because the modern world changes. But back then, they used to drop off people if they couldn't take care of them, and the place to take them is obviously like a temple or some other type of a spiritual or likewise religious type of a location, because obviously you can guarantee that people of the cloth or lack thereof cloth are going to take care of people who are disenfranchised. So there were a lot of cripples that were dropped off. There were a lot of people with diseases that were dropped off. There were orphans that were dropped off. And most of my job in that life, honestly, if people want to know the true story, was trying to deal with all of that. And I had a hell of a temper too, by the way.
Did you?
Yes.
So what was that about, do you think?
I felt in that life, okay, I'm letting you into the shadows, I felt in that life as if my ideas were never understood. Especially, and this is part of why I got so excited this time about reincarnating here in America, is because here you deal with serious irreverence. But the upside of the irreverence is that people really take responsibility for themselves, and they don't separate themselves from spiritual stuff, from God. But my frustration in that life was that if you say anything, it's all about you. Like there's a reverence they have in those countries for spiritual teachers.
See, because of the different culture.
Yeah, so you'd say, this is what we need to do, and then they say, oh, you can do it for me, you're amazing, then you do this for me, and then they make you into a god or a saint, and they're missing the point, and so there's a frustration. It's almost like there's a lack of ability to communicate in that life with people about their true capabilities, because they don't want to actually own that. They'd rather stay stuck in the place where there are people who are better and I'm just in a lowly position, and it's like a state of powerlessness which they were addicted to, and that frustrated me. But and it's ultimately part of why multiple of us who were participating in that perspective decided to pull out and not do the next incarnation of that particular individuated consciousness. Meaning that when Shirdi reincarnated as Sathya, a lot of us pulled out. And now, of course, this is difficult for people to understand because we don't see consciousness like a river, but that's how it is. So you have a main river, which is really big, but that river might be comprised of multiple streams of consciousness. So multiple streams of consciousness can participate in one perspective. So often spiritual teachers are a grouping of consciousness. So when one consciousness or one intention really continues to a next life, meaning this intention has moved from Shirdi Sai Baba to Sathya Sai Baba, then sometimes only a portion of those soul streams, say I just did that, a portion will continue, and these ones will not. They'll go into other incarnations. That's what I decided to do. That's why I did not participate in Sathya Sai Baba. There was in that particular perspective, there was a major rift that happened, if you want to know the honest truth.
Yeah, so what, you mean over like the effectiveness that you could have? Or?
Yes. The rift was specifically this. There's this thing called a siddhi ability, and it's when your consciousness transcends, you now have the capability of doing all these amazing things that we've heard about, like changing water into wine and walking on water and performing miracles, right? Now, a portion of us that were part of the Shirdi Sai consciousness agreed that that was about the dumbest thing you could do to someone. Because what we started realizing was that every time we performed miracles, it actually made people feel less close to their own godhood nature. And they turned you into God. Now they become more powerless. Now, if you're a good teacher, how can you justify making other people feel more powerless while putting yourself on a pedestal? So what some of us did was, hell no, we're not in alignment with that. We're pulling out, because the majority of the consciousness stream participating that went on to Sathya Sai Baba basically thought that that was the best way to show people that they were not limited by the physical dimension, that all things are an illusion, basically. So that was the decision which caused me to split off from that particular train of consciousness and to continue into this embodiment, and other portions to continue into Sathya Sai Baba.
Interesting. Yeah. So basically, it's those can be a distraction. It sounds like.
City abilities? Obviously, if I'm in this perspective, I think it's not only a massive distraction, I think it actually damages people.
Yeah, because then they're not thinking about their emotional, mental soul.
Exactly. So while I'm never going to sit up here and say that Satya Sai Baba has no merit, because obviously it's like there's a portion of myself that did continue there, something I relate to at least, the rest of me shakes my head.
Yeah, at why he was kind of bullheaded on that.
Yeah, and it just like the mass of worship. Worship is, appreciation is a very different vibration from worship. Worship destroys lives. So I have a very hard time with people that perpetuate that worship in their followers, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, because it just creates more separation and makes people feel inadequate.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting because now there was a awesome discussion in the Teal Tribe group on the subject of A.J. Miller. Do you remember the guy that claims to be Jesus?
Oh, yeah, okay. I remember you posted that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because I'd seen some of his videos, I like what he's had to say. But then I had some doubts and had heard of some various accusations and whatnot. But so far, what I've seen of what he's teaching is really right on. And there's a very fascinating video in which he talks about his, so he claims life is Jesus, and that's exactly one of the things he says is that he didn't want to focus on these miracles. Because that exactly for that reason.
Yes.
And really what he's teaching now is about the importance of especially the emotional state of being and healing emotional wounds and stuff like that. So do you have any, are you familiar with, have you seen any of his videos or anything, or do you?
No, I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
Okay. So you don't have any sense as to whether this guy actually is Jesus or not?
No, I do have a sense.
Okay. Do you want to?
I think that what has happened is exactly what I am describing, where there are portions of people are thinking too literally about reincarnation. Perhaps even him. Of course, I haven't talked to him, so I don't know whether he's actually thinking this or not. But when we think literally and very, very physically based about reincarnation, we're convinced that this person is a clump of energy and that clump continues from life to life, almost like it's wearing a physical body suit. But that's not how consciousness works. And so what you find at this particular time, I'll just be honest, and I'm like, it's ironic because I grew up so anti-Christian, it was unbelievable. So what I'm about to say is shocking. We're in the return of Christ, basically, right now. And so Christ consciousness is making an immense return onto center stage. And so when that happens, what you notice is that the consciousness that was participating in the perspective of Jesus is now incarnated in multiple different people. And so, and I'm hoping Buddha comes back in the future too, but in this particular time, Jesus is the one making a return. So I have not watched him myself, but I would not surprise me at all if it was definitely an aspect of that consciousness. And I would imagine that it's a massively difficult position to fill, looking back at what has happened to your teachings and seeing that this is what has come of it.
Yeah. Because Christianity has been, in my mind, probably the single most destructive force on the planet.
Yes, it has been, and that's about to change. The Muslim religion is about to destroy everything. And it's going to make the Christian religion look like child's play. Now, while I'm sitting in America and that sounds super bigoted, it's still true about where we're headed and about the consciousness of that particular religion. So when I get out of body, of course, there's all kinds of murmurings happening about what type of religious consciousness is the most harmful. And the two that are actually making the top of the list right now is Mormonism and Muslim.
Yeah, both very into self-denial, I think it's safe to say.
You know what I think is ironic is one is operating behind scenes and the other is operating in front of people's faces.
The Mormonism would be behind the scenes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Most people have no idea how much power, most people have no idea how many members, and it's sort of like making this very enormous silent uprising, basically. But,
well, we almost had a Mormon president, so...
Yeah. But with the Muslim religion, it's the exact opposite. It's going to be loud, it's going to be right in your face, and it's going to have no mercy. Which is ironic, of course, because, well, you know, most people who really take over and stand for religion doing damage don't really actually stand for the actual religion, but they say they do, so... I mean, it's kind of like that. It's like people say, oh, I'm Christian, so let's go burn people who are gay, and it's like, you could not be more opposite of Christian if you literally tried. But we're going to run into the same thing with the Muslim religion soon.
Well, it's definitely manifesting now.
I have been staying away from the news, so all I get really is information from my little travels at night.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've been definitely, staying away from it more. I see some headlines here and there, but yeah, it's definitely not uplifting.
Yep.
So, how would you what does that mean, Christ consciousness?
Well, what does that mean? Gosh, it's like, how do you quantify that? It's really this idea that you have to, it's the bringing of love back onto planet Earth, really. Yeah. So even though I tend to talk a lot more in terms of oneness, Christ consciousness is more about love and what you can do with love.
That's so, really, yeah, because there's a really interesting story that A.J. Miller tells in the course of that video, talking about his life as Jesus. And he says he was, a teenager or something, and there were like rumblings and murmurings that the Messiah was coming. There was a feeling that was happening.
Yes.
And so and he didn't think at that time that he was the Messiah.
Yep.
So he was looking around, like waiting for the Messiah to come. And when a spiritual teacher would show up and talk, then he wanted to go see all these guys and see which one might be the Messiah.
Yes.
And he said what he was looking for them to be talking about love.
Yes.
But then over and over again he would be disappointed because that wasn't what they were talking about. They were talking about morality.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, it's amazing and sad how that basic concept cannot seem to be conveyed.
Yes, I know.
No matter how many people try to. So.
Yeah, the question remains the same: how to lead people to it, because you can't teach these things by talking. Our words really only serve as a means to lead people into a state of experiencing. So until people experience the true power of love and the immunity of love, then they're never going to understand love. So your job really is not to help them to understand; it's to lead them to their own understanding.
And to highlight a possibility.
Yes.
Yeah. To just say there's a doorway here you can step through if you like.
Exactly.
So as for your astral travels, is that kind of a nightly thing, or?
Every single night, yes. And I can do it in the middle of the day. I mean, like spontaneously, we could just do it right now if I wanted to. But usually, I pick the nighttime because in the daytime I'm doing so many practical things, like the typical mother. Oh wait, I could go check on the Middle East, but I have dishes to do.
Yep, that's definitely the difficult balancing act.
Yes.
So you said that our dreams are actually astral traveling.
Yes, they are.
But there's a distinction between that and another form of astral traveling, right? Or maybe not another form, but or perhaps another awareness of it.
It's another dimensional aspect of it. And when most people are dreaming, they're unaware that they are dreaming. So the difference between astral projection and dreaming is the awareness. lucid dreaming is the closest you get to bridging the gap between out-of-body travel that's conscious and dreaming, which is unconscious, where you're actually out of body. Your consciousness is interacting with the fifth and sixth dimensional realities, mostly symbolic forms of your own thoughts in your life, your own fears, things like that. But when you start to become lucid dreaming, then you wake up to the reality that you can control it. It's literally like a hologram that responds instantaneously to your thoughts. So that gets really fun. But there are way, way higher dimensional realities than that. And consensus realities, much like Earth is a consensus reality. And it just gets, I mean, it's so complicated. It gets so complicated. Anything you could possibly dream up that applies to the same rules that are available to this universe exists in the multidimensional aspects of this universe. Of course, there are multiple universes as well. And it makes no point to talk about them whatsoever because they don't even operate by the same laws or rules. To use a language, to use this language to convey it is not even possible. By using a word, you've already lost the essence of the other dimensional realities in other universes. So, but like you can look at all kinds of different things out of body. I spend a lot of time surveying human consciousness. It's almost like It's almost like when you get into these other dimensional realities, you have a telescope or a. Is that not a telescope? No, like a microscope, right? On Earth. That's one of my favorite things to look at. And so you can zoom in on human consciousness. You can zoom in on cetacean consciousness. You can zoom in on insect consciousness. You can zoom out on collective consciousness. You can look at any aspect that you want to. So that, and of course, if you're looking for your answers to questions that you've got, it's about the most perfect thing you could do. It's like an unlimited library. But not all perspectives agree, which is when you get into issues.
Fascinating. And so is it sort of always a drag when you come back to Earth, or
it's a startling shift. It seems to be that the vibration between the fourth and the third dimension is dramatic enough that you can really feel the difference, you know. And so it's hard. It used to be harder. I've gotten way more used to it. It's kind of like when you first do a deep sea dive and you feel what it's like to pressurize. It's like really jarring. But after X amount of times of doing it, it becomes a normal sensation. And so you don't react to it with as much violence. But it's not always a drag, no. And there's really nothing quite as good as like tastes or smells or sights in this particular dimension. So
that's what I was going to ask next is, when you get it right on third dimensional reality, is that kind of like the best thing?
Yeah, that's why everybody wants in here.
Because it's the most kind of visceral or something, or
yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's like the most embodied, so you get to like it's a multi-sensory experience of love or a multi-sensory experience of comfort, and that's really unparalleled. I mean, it's funny because we like to always glorify the idea of objectivity without realizing just how beautiful subjectivity is. And you've got the opportunity in a third dimension with an extreme level of subjectivity, which can just be amazing, you know? And what's super fun, what I find fun, of course, is that when you go to the higher dimensional levels, you can come into different subjective realities, which is honestly how I do a lot of my work with people. What I can do is go up out of my body and then into theirs. So I can actually, and by the way, a lot of non-physical beings can experience life through your perspective. So I can do that. And it's really interesting to see just how drastically different subjective realities just between people are on this planet. You would think the purple is purple to everyone, but it sure as hell isn't.
So how many other of ET races are third dimensional?
Almost every one of them. It's an option. Does that make sense? That's the difference. For most humans, it's not really an option at this point to be physical or non-physical. Their only access to non-physical stuff is when they're sleeping at night, and then they're not conscious of it. But a lot of extraterrestrial races who have shifted into the 6th and 7th dimensional realities, physicality is a choice they can make. So like they exist most of the time in 6th dimensional reality, but then they can focus themselves into a state where they make love or something like that.
And so they can step into 3rd dimensional reality at will.
Yes.
And so they would then appear to us to be another person? Yeah,
many of them would. But the problem with stepping into a 3rd dimensional consciousness in an extraterrestrial embodiment is that those embodiments are not going to be compatible with Earth. I think it's super funny that most people don't understand, well, if there's so many aliens in the universe, why wouldn't they immediately show themselves? Now, that's a whole other subject because it has to do with why they wouldn't show themselves when they can. But there's a whole group that can't, literally couldn't even if they wanted to. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. The Arcturian race, right? The Arcturian race has an embodiment, a physical embodiment, which is not compatible with nitrogen at all. Now, placing them in an environment where there's high levels of nitrogen, which there are on this particular planet, is a lot like putting a slug in salt. It would evaporate. Bam. So, like, it's funny because, like, we humans, we can't even go to the depths of the ocean on our own planet, and we're confused about why other extraterrestrial beings wouldn't just be able to, like, eat, breathe, sleep, and poop like we can.
They just know better, so they don't come here.
Oh yeah. The point at which you can come here is the point at which you've at least developed awareness enough to know whether you can or not. So what they do is they project themselves forth, which they can, because from those higher levels of consciousness, it becomes very easy to literally project yourself forth in order to become the perspective of like a life form that's existing. So what they do is they project themselves forth. There's multiple ways of doing it, as a physical human or as whatever being they're trying to interact with. So, like, let's say that a whole lot of issues were happening in the dolphin community. An extraterrestrial would be most likely to project itself as a dolphin. But it just so happens that there's not a lot of contrast going on in the dolphin community. So
yeah, they're a pretty harmonious race.
Yes.
Yeah. So I forget if I already asked you this previously in another interview, but what are crop circles? Are any of them created by ETs?
Yes, it's a mix of things. So what you'll find is that there's a lot. Humans are highly symbolic, and a lot of languages are highly symbolic. Now, when you look at symbols, obviously, symbols are the most unanimous language. So what you have is collective human consciousness is actually focusing in such a way now that it is able to create like those huge symbolic communications. So what is happening essentially in a great many cases is that the collective human consciousness, which is its own thought form, is communicating its desires. But obviously those communications are not going to come in the form of English or Italian or whatever other language, because that's not the unanimous language for human consciousness. The unanimous language for human consciousness will be things like mathematics and symbols. So when that happens, you'll see the Earth actually is responding to human consciousness. And so human consciousness creates a great many of them, but this is the thing. This is where it gets interesting. When that started to happen way back when, a lot of extraterrestrial races were watching that and realizing that is how they communicate. So a lot of these crop circles are actually them answering the things that we have created. It's like it's us being super subconscious of the fact that we're doing it. But these fields and things are actually our message board to the rest of the universe, and they're using it back with us as well, and with each other. So crop circles are not as simple as, yes, this is the one being, the one race that's using them, and this is the one purpose for them. It's really like, it's like there are multiple beings all using the same whiteboard, trying to use the same symbols to connect with one another. And sometimes they're using the whiteboard to talk to themselves, like like certain extraterrestrials will talk to other extraterrestrials, and then they'll be trying to use it to talk to us, and we'll be using it to try to talk to them. But we're really muddled about figuring out which is the case. And that's going to be dependent on the specific crop circle. And of course, some of the crop circles are man-made, and that's just because people are trying to draw attention, and it's a game, I guess. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit frustrated because while I mean, it's a beautiful art, but I'm also frustrated because they've done a massive detraction,
So how's that?
Well, the people who are like deliberately going out and making them in secret, and then like everyone's thinking it's aliens, they're drawing a lot of credibility away from the reality, essentially, which is that we're not the only race that's at work here on Earth. So it frustrates me personally a little bit.
Just because it kind of muddies the waters.
Yes, which we don't need them any more muddy, honestly. Humans don't need it any more muddy, in my opinion.
Yeah, people are all around confused, I'm sure.
Yeah, and like when you confuse people, they have a tendency, I've noticed, humans that are confused have a tendency to go into a state of skepticism. And it's a very dangerous vibration, especially in a world that is dominated by law of attraction, where thought becomes thing. If you're in a state of skepticism, which is really just the life jacket to prevent you from drowning in disappointment, now you're projecting forth this very limited view, and so all you can perceive is limited. So really, honestly, the confusion and things like that are leading to a state where humanity will be incapable of seeing what it really is here to perceive and see. So skepticism really is like, if you want to talk enemies, is like enemy number one for the enlightenment.
Because it's kind of just withdrawing from reality, basically?
It's solidifying reality. I mean, really, skeptics would love to tell you that they're just sort of being realists and keeping their minds open. I have never once met a skeptic in my life that is actually in that state. Skeptics, like I say, they want to prevent themselves from disappointment. How do you prevent yourself from disappointment? You go to a state of doubt first, so that when that is like validated for you, it doesn't hurt so bad. So they are essentially living in a state of doubtfulness. Now think about what living in a state of doubtfulness does for your ability to create and your ability to perceive things that are outside the normal range of perception.
Yeah. And to evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to go over very well, I'll tell you that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It just kind of freezes you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wanted to get to sort of a basic conundrum that I think most people are stuck in, and so I talked about this in another video of mine. And the title of the video was "The Problem with Most Human Souls," and so I'll give a quick little kind of silly little analogy, and then get your take on this.
I like analogies; they're fun.
I do too. I come up with analogies all the time. They kind of, give the mind something to visualize that can then expand into a more complicated, understanding of that concept. But so the silly analogy is: imagine a rubber ball, and this rubber ball has little rubber spikes that stick out that are hollow but are part of the rubber ball. Hey, what do you know?
Synchronicity, y'all.
Yep. So imagine some spikes on that, but this is a hollow rubber ball is the idea.
Okay.
And so this represents our energy projecting outwards to the world.
Okay.
But if that ball deflates, then those spikes collapse inwards and then are then projecting inwards instead of projecting outwards. And so the concept then there is that basically when you aren't claiming your own space, then your energy collapses inwards instead of projecting from inwards outwards to the universe. Does that make any sense to you?
I'm struggling with that one.
The idea is a matter of sort of bringing the energy through one's being and then flowing with it outwards, rather than the energy getting collapsed in on itself and thus not flowing, because it's kind of stuck in your individual self.
Yes.
So does that?
Yes, I think it's a good analogy.
Okay. And so what would you then say is the solution to reversing that state of being?
Authenticity. See, we are in our most, if you want to stick with the analogy, in our most natural state, we are going to project ourselves outwards, because that's the whole purpose for coming here and living in the first place. So if that's your whole purpose, then that's the state that's most natural to you. Now what happens is, if you're going to stick with that analogy, is that these spikes are going outwards, right? If it's met with massive resistance, that means you're not validated in expressing. You are rejected and you are told to suppress that. Then that honestly is what causes that implosion to occur. So obviously then what it is that there's some aspect of the self that is unacceptable. That causes the most massive implosion, and it's what causes the subconscious. So honestly, coming into your authenticity, where you're no longer hiding the aspects of yourself you think that are unacceptable, that didn't go anywhere, that they're still there, you're more sort of starting to own those things and admit to them. Admitting is the first step. Then it begins to cause the energy to start moving outwards again.
It's just a matter of basically intentionally reversing that flow.
That's the start. But like, if you want to talk authenticity, let's talk honesty. Now, dishonesty with the self happens most often with our emotions. So you'll see somebody, here's how to implode your ball, right? How to implode your ball is, you're sitting down at a dinner and somebody says something that really hurts you, right? But it's not okay to express that for whatever reason. Maybe you're afraid of conflict, or maybe it's not okay to get angry or feel upset or whatever. So that person says, they can feel that you emotionally withdrew, and they might say something like, well, what the hell's wrong? And you say, nothing, I'm fine, it's great, it's all right. That is a state of inauthenticity. I'm not being honest with myself or you at this moment. Now, being honest with other people, of course, is a byproduct of being honest with the self, but there's nothing worse than not being honest with yourself. What scares me to death, as it applies to people becoming their embodied, realized self, is when people are unaware of the state they're actually in. So, like, if that same person, I could say that thing which I just explained to you in the scenario where I say, no, I'm fine because I'm lying to you, or I could say, no, I'm really fine because I'm lying to me. That's when you get into serious implosion issues. I have to believe that I'm okay with this. And so even though everything in me is reacting the opposite way, I'm going to deny it. I'm going to suppress it. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
But at least one step in greater awareness in that department could be that even if in that particular scenario you aren't honest with the other person, mm-hmm. that you at least become more aware and honest with yourself.
Hell yes.
Yeah. And
I'm all for steps. Steps are good.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a good sort of compromise or whatever, that we kind of inevitably, our human societies are still stuck where they're at, and you're likely to, pile a whole lot of hurt onto yourself trying to be radically honest, with your family or whatever. But at least coming to greater honesty with yourself of how you're really feeling.
Yes, and of course that statement will change the more that somebody begins to really love and prioritize themselves. What you'll find is the more that people start to love and prioritize themselves, the more that their decisions start to change. So at one phase in our development of self-love, it's really profoundly unloving of us to not admit things to other people and not be radically honest to other people. We might find that in our progression, it gets to the point where we have transcended all of that and there's no need. So we get to decide based on where we are at currently what is like the most self-loving thing for us to do. And you're accurate that the most self-loving thing for some people to do in that particular circumstance is to be honest with the self and not others. That was a long-winded way of me validating your thought, but...
No, that was good. Yeah, because, you know, there are realities that we have to contend with, and the funny thing is that there's a guy, Brad Blanton, who has sort of commercialized the phrase radical honesty, and I think he's doing good stuff. But I felt that he had a bit of a fundamentalist view on it. Of his thing was that he's always going to tell the truth. And I before I even heard of him, actually, I made a video kind of along the lines of what you were, or what both of us were just expressing here, kind of that, you know, a more nuanced way of being. And then somebody commented on it and said, this sounds like Brad Blanton, or brought up Brad Blanton because of the title, Radical Honesty. And so I decided, what the heck, I'll send him the link to the video. So I found him on Facebook and went ahead. And then, so he wrote back and said, well, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. So he was talking his talk and walking his walk, and being honest. But basically, I think he didn't care for the more nuanced perspective that I was offering there.
Anybody who is in alignment with radical freedom is not going to be so A-okay with the nuance until they realize that everybody has to be free to choose what's self-loving for themselves. Now that, of course, is a slippery slope, because, I mean, for some people can choose that something self-loving for themselves that really does super harm to other things. Now, and I can tell you that he's running into the same conundrum that I often run into, relative to the veganism concept.
Yeah, and kind of becoming constricted, basically, in the perspective of it people should be doing this.
Well, what it is that it becomes difficult because you can see what's good for like ultimate. I can tell you that where he's coming from is ultimately the answer. I mean, I'm honestly just gonna straight up tell you, like, ultimately, if you want to talk about the highest level of our embodiment, then like total honesty is the answer, because ultimately, like, we should, quote unquote, be living in a society where we're not affected by the honesty in the way that we're making it mean that there's something bad or wrong with us. That is a byproduct of the way we are currently being raised by our parents. So once that goes away, that will change. The reason that we have to live in nuance relative to eating meat or nuance relative to honesty right now is because of the effect that our socialization process has had on us. That right now, a great many things which are ultimately the answer are not going to be in alignment with self-love. In fact, they will be quite in alignment with self-hate for a great many people. So we are living in nuance because we're still in a process of recovery. It's almost like the answer for everyone is to run. Yes, run on two legs. But some of us have like our legs blown off. So we have to learn to walk first.
Yeah, everyone's at a different place and a different vibration, and different things are going to help them based on their sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like, it's kind of a crazy concept that true honesty is not just the way it is. I mean, I'm guessing that's the way that it is in upper,
Yes, but I mean, this is what I like to say about polyamory, because everyone asks about polyamory, and my answer is yes, polyamory is absolutely the answer for our race. It's where we're headed. But the reality is that the majority of us cannot remove our self-worth from our partners, and until that's the case, polyamory is about the worst thing you could do for yourself. So we're in one of those sort of steps, And honesty, we're in that step with honesty. I mean, I'm not at a place right now, and this, I'll just give you an example. I'm not in a place right now with my career where I could walk up and tell some of the people who are like in the publishing business exactly what I think without getting fired or whatever else from projects and stuff like that. But actually in our future, when you take a look at the future life path potentials and when you look at other races that are already in alignment with that, you would be perfectly fine saying your piece about something and the other person would not make it mean what it means right now. Right? So like, you know, the person expressing to their boss their dissatisfaction wouldn't make the boss want to fire them because it's not an assault on the boss.
Yeah, because there's too much defensiveness and people take things personally. And
Yes.
yeah, I think, you know, that's one of the advantages, like, to having a YouTube channel and the comments that you get, you know, have really, for myself, criticism really just, you know, rolls off my back at this point because people have slung everything at me that, you know.
Well, you must tell me how you do it sometime, because the honest truth for me is that regardless of how much I've been getting and have gotten over the years, it still doesn't it is decreasing, you're correct. It's decreasing because I've heard it all, but it still isn't like the sting still stings.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if, because I mean, I know that you get a lot more views than I do, and so you really can't, you know, spend your whole day replying to comments.
I don't reply at all.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe because I've been more engaged in that regard, then I've kind of, you know, I've shot my stuff back at people and whatever, and maybe I've kind of been in the process a little bit more in that way.
Maybe, yeah.
Or who knows what else.
But I'm always interested if you've got more insight. I mean, I've got so much stuff on my priority list of like to talk out of body with people about and to go research about that. It seems like all of these important things just keep getting bumped down the list to more important things. But I'm obviously going to do a lot more stuff on that in the future. But I'm also interested, of course, if you do videos on that kind of stuff as well. It would be really helpful for everybody because being injured by criticism is like a unanimous issue.
Exactly. I think it to a great extent comes back to that issue of anger, and you know that it just triggers anger in people, and so they have to contend with that. And to some extent, I think it's just, you know, whatever it brings up in you. Recognize it and work with it.
Yes.
And, yeah. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. I just over the past couple of years, it's kind of to the point where I enjoy some of the negative comments for the opportunity to respond to them in ways that they wouldn't expect. Either to be kind of jokey or whatever. But I've had some people come back to me with a completely and utterly shifted attitude because of my comment, which neither was engaging with them in the same way, you know, at the same level of negativity that they were, but also wasn't completely dismissive of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of them, all that I said was, "Feel your anger, Luke." A little Star Wars reference, because he'd written this long rant at me, and I think that little thing just brought to his attention, you know, how kind of over the top he was, and so then he came back with quite a different you know, perspective on things. So. just kind of working with it and recognizing your own defensiveness and reactionariness and just becoming more aware, I guess.
Yeah, it's important for people to realize if you have a defensive reaction, then there's always a wound that's being pushed at. That's exactly what I would say. Like, look for the wound.
Yeah. Especially if it's very disproportionate to the actual circumstance.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'm typing that right now.
Of little reminder.
Yeah. Ta-da.
All right. So I guess maybe the last thing here was I'm curious about to what extent our, the person that we are in this life is a representation of our soul, as it were. And because there's kind of the like spiritual catchphrase of that it's all just kind of a movie that we're stepping into and playing our parts.
Yes.
But is that truly accurate?
Yes, but there's there's this idea that these parts are sort of set up as separate beings without us being there. But the reality is, we're like an art piece that our soul created. So you can't separate the human from the soul any more than you can separate a painting from the painter. It's an expression of the painter. It very much reflects the soul.
Okay, so it isn't if it's all just an act and it's all
No, hell no. Well, something much more exquisite and beautiful than that. But I mean, to ask that question would be the same as to ask, like, what portion of Frida's paintings were Frida? It's confusing.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot better. Just because I don't resonate with the idea that it's all just an act.
Well, it is an act, and you're worthless, right?
And what?
I'm teasing you.
What was the second part that you said there?
I said it is an act. I said it is an act, and you're absolutely worthless. No, I think that a lot of our analogies are useful. It's like anything in the spiritual field can be used for your benefit or for your detriment, I've noticed. So we like to take these analogies and then run with them and apply them to everything when it's very much so about the circumstance that analogy is put forth for the purpose of. So we put forth analogies like you're walking into a movie theater to help people understand that, like, walking out of the movie theater with death is a really easy transition. That's when it's a good idea to use that analogy. When we lose it is when we use that analogy in accordance with self-worth or whatever, stuff like that. And now we start to think, oh my gosh, it's absolutely worth it. Like, it's meaningless. It's just a stupid game that, like, it's already been set up. I don't even have a choice, That's a good thing that we need to say to everybody. Everybody out there, okay? Every single analogy, every single thing that's said spiritually can be used in context appropriately or out of context to do a lot of damage to yourself.
They're necessarily insufficient and incomplete.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just our way of trying to understand concepts that are basically beyond the mind.
Yes.
So is there a energetic gender in some context to the soul?
No.
So there isn't even like a tendency in one direction or the other?
If there's a tendency, it's because a specific soul stream has the desire to experience that particular gender more because of whatever that is giving rise to. Obviously, being in the position of being masculine is going to give rise to totally different experiences and a very certain consistency of experiences. It's sort of like some people prefer salty dishes and other people prefer sugary dishes. And it's all based on what we think our highest expansion is going to come from. But it just so happens that even though there's absolutely no gender, basically, when there was first polarity invented within the universe, there are a great many, a portion of consciousness, I should say, that decided to go with the direction of female and a certain portion that decided to go in the direction of male. So I should say it depends how far back you trace the soul. Like, I have experienced more embodiments as a man. So when you're around me, you might feel that the essence itself is more masculine. But the reason for that is just because I have experienced that so much, and every life is a culmination of the previous lives, that I would vibrate at a frequency that is more masculine than feminine at this point.
But then as you
As you
move up into higher dimensions, and that just
yeah, it's just completely just yes. Do you like the sound effect? That's what it sounds like too. No, I'm kidding. It really doesn't sound anything like that, but I like sound effects.
All right. Well, I mean, there's always more to discuss, obviously, but I'm guessing you probably got to get on with your day. And
Yeah, whoa, it's 2 o'clock. Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I will be definitely watching to see where the Hawaii workshop happens, because my plans are wide open. So I'm not sure how long I'm going to be in Hawaii, and that would definitely be nice to meet up with you guys there. But we'll see.
Yes, there will be.
But you kind of have a date already. You said in February.
Yeah, they do. I don't know my own schedule. Isn't that a surprise?
Yeah, I hear you.
But yes,
Yeah,
that will let us know.
Yeah. Cool. Well, you're gonna really enjoy Hawaii, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been a awesome discussion for sure. I think people are gonna get a lot out of this.
I hope so.
And so, is your book is still in the works?
Yeah, it's slated to come out in May.
Oh, great! Of next year.
Yeah, with publishing companies, it takes them a long time to market things and also to like develop a strategy for the book and all this other stuff. So, yeah, it's gonna come out in May. But I've got some other fun stuff coming out in the meantime too.
What's that?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm in the middle of writing another book, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that particular book yet. I've also, you'll be the first to know this, I've also created a tarot card deck. So I'm looking for a publisher for that.
Excellent. And then do you think that you'll be moving in the next year, or just not sure? Who knows? Yeah.
I'm going to stay in uncertainty. What do you know?
Yeah. Well, you got a nice, cozy little house there to spend the winter in. So.
Yes, I do.
Have you skied yet? Are the resorts open?
Resorts are open, but yeah, I don't want to mess my skis up that bad. We don't have a serious base of snow yet, and so it's one of those things where if you're going skiing, you better bring your crap skis.
Yeah, because you're gonna maybe hit some rocks and stuff. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I haven't skied in a few years, but I am a skier and love it.
You should come ski sometime. That'll be the next progression of what we do on top of the mountaintops in Park City. That'll be the next progression of what we do on top of the mountaintops in Park City. Last time we hiked.
Skiing would be even more awesome.
Much more.
Totally. Cool. We'll see where my adventures take me this coming winter.
Probably all over.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Teal. This was really awesome.
Thank you. I will see you later.
Thank you for your time, and talk to you again.
Hey, bye-bye.
Okay. Namaste and aloha.
Aloha.